it's all because of you. Thanks so much for inviting us and making this a really, really fantastic evening for all of us. We appreciate it. And also the past 2 years and what led up to this moment. So who am I? I'm Ydalene Coetsee, and 30 years ago, Carol phoned me and asked me, can't I please teach her some Afrikaans? Because she would like to understand her farm workers better. Can you believe that, Carol? And then sometime after that, our book club talked about a Spanish book, and Carol used her second language to help me with Don Quixote. And that was how it all began. So Carol, it is so special for us. And Carol wants all of you to comment and ask questions the whole time, so please don't think this is going to be a formal business, this. Yes, the connection then, we've been teaching together for almost 30 years. So she's a dear friend, this Carol. And now she's going to introduce herself.
Okay, thank you, Ydalene. Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I wanted to do something to introduce the book to our farm neighbors, because the book came out of our farm. And we have similar experiences. And you don't live in a vacuum. You don't live in a farm just all by yourself. You've got neighbors that you need, neighbors that you want, and they're part of this as well. So thanks for coming as well, and friends. And we kept it a small launch because there will be other launches planned for Stellenbosch in town, in the city. But I wanted this to be an intimate first gathering. So thank you again for your support. So as you know, and I think most of you know, just quickly, people often say, why are you in South Africa? So I say I came over 30 some years ago on an exchange with the University of Western Cape, and I taught there for a couple of months, and the students went out on strike, and I began a good introduction to what's happening in South Africa. Then in that trip, guess what I met you on? And the rest is history. I got myself sent back to South Africa, got to know each other a bit better, and married in Stellenbosch, and we managed to buy this wine farm, scraped everything together to do it, and we've been living there for 32 years, and 22 of them, well, the farm, when we got the farm, it came with a family was already living there, the worker and his family. So we just accepted that, and we went on. And in those 22 years, the experiences are captured to a large extent in the book, Worlds Apart. Of course, you have the story, then you have the backstory. So they are there. And but it wasn't always a peaceful coexistence, and it wasn't always a team and a partnership, which is what I wanted. You want people to work together. But things don't always work the way you expect. And then I saw early on, and then instead of getting me to understand more, I began to understand less, because it was a very different world that our workers lived in from the world we lived in, although we were living just a few meters apart, maybe not even as wide as this room. The laborer's cottage and our house were close together. So we needed to work together, but it wasn't as easy as you would think. Anyway, and that's what got me thinking about the differences and how to bridge them, and how to become, to work together. And then how we, who were the employers now, how could we help to raise the level of life for the people on the farm? How could we get better housing? How could we get, how can we improve for now and for the future? So out came this book. And I think I wanted to put things in writing because sometimes your thoughts are all over. And once in a while during those 22 years, things would happen in which I did put a few things in writing, but not to collect them. And then how to get people to read them. I mean, nobody's going to read a report on what it's like to live on the farm. So as time went on, I began to think, I need to put this in a story form. I need to put it that people would want to read it. And then I thought that, I've been preparing since high school to write. And I didn't have much chance because most of my life I'm busy studying or earning my living and doing a lot of other things, a lot of interesting, fascinating things. But I did manage to get a doctorate in applied linguistics with a minor in intercultural communication. So I had both the language and the communication sides, and that I never realized how well that would prepare me for life here on a farm in South Africa. So that's the background, and I think we discussed outsider, insider.
Yeah, I think it's really important because one of the very, very first words on this book is an outsider's view. And I think many of you, knowing Carol, would start believing, man, Carol, are you not an insider here? Are you quite sure you're still an outsider? Why do you regard yourself as an outsider? Can it be a positive thing when you're writing such a book? Because if I have to ask the question about why do you write the book, and you can say something like, perhaps my specific perspective is still missing. When we have, and all of us have lots and lots of shelves of books that we read the whole time, every day, is it possible that your specific perspective was still missing in the Western Cape wine farm way of writing a novel?
Well, as far as I could see, I read as much South African literature as I could get my hands on and find time to read. Most of it is insider, people that live here that know the country, know the farms, know the land. But I was looking at that from a distance. And I think that was a strength of the book because I don't have an axe to grind. I wasn't really part of the past, just the tail end of it when I got over here. And so I think that viewpoint contributes something. And of course the story is real. It's based on true events. I had to change a few things a bit. I think most writers do change to protect identities of people that you base your characters on. And I took some writing courses at UCT when I could find them, and they said, yeah, change the hair of the character, change into your character, and change the color of your eyes. They'll never see themselves at all. And it's been borne out by other people, other writers, that even a friend of mine, Pamela Uesta, whose works I've all read and admired, she said that in one of her books, she said, look, I based this character on you, her friend. And the friend says, oh, well, let me see. The friend says, no, that's not me. And then the friend gave it to another friend and said, look, is that me in this book? The other friend said, no. So I think it's true that people don't see themselves in the book. And also, how you see them isn't how they see themselves. So how you present it might be different. But it's almost like you can't make this up. so as real as the people were, I tried to capture who they were. And so most of them are based in fact. And of course rooted in the area, and I already talked about the point of view. And this also, there are some works by, I think, André Brunk and a few other people that do write about from the point of view of farm and the farm people, the farm owners. But literature these days is more about, it's not so much about that. And I wanted to, I didn't even say I want to do this. That's all I knew. It's all I could do is from the perspective that I had. So that's what I wrote from. And as Ydalene said, maybe I'm more of an insider these days, but I was saying that I often say that I salute 2 flags and I cry to 2 national anthems. And I think I belong to America still, and I belong to South Africa as well. And so I'm both an insider and an outsider. That's how I feel, anyway.
I think all of us would agree with that. And we think of you as more an insider than an outsider. We're glad to say that. But the characters then, did anybody recognize themselves? I'm not talking about Johan because I know he's not at all in this book. I realize that. But the rest, anybody else that read it and recognized themselves?
I think there's one person who did. May I highlight you, Andries? Yes. Andries was in the book as well to help us find a solution. He's a labor consultant, and he understands how to deal with labor disputes. So we needed expertise. We weren't doing so well ourselves. We needed some help. And he's in the book, and of course he changed his name. I didn't change his eyes or his hair, though. But the farm people, I think there are 1, maybe 2 that might read the book. But I think the others it's not a reading culture. It won't be easy for them to read. But at the same time, people can read, can be read to, and I think they will understand what's going on in the book. So, but these are early days in the book. It was just published in 2021, and I didn't realize how long it takes for a book to get out there. People need time to read it, respond to it, and people need time to decide if they want it in their bookstores. And it just takes a very long time. The media takes a while. So we, eventually I think though, I would definitely want to go back to the farm people and get their perspectives on some of the things that were said and written about. But Andries, are you happy with the way I presented you in the book?
Very much, thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much. Okay.
Carol, I would like to ask now next about, has writing the book changed you and your perspective? Was it kind of a narrative therapy or not really? Did it help towards an understanding of the situation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It definitely did. And I think anybody that keeps a diary, you keep it because it helps you understand yourself. So I think this was not a diary, but I think putting my thoughts down in order, trying to anyway, really did help me understand better. I wouldn't say it's narrative therapy, but it helped me clarify and it helped me think about these things because I wanted to think about it. You can't just go in there and do what you want to do. You have to relate to people. You have to listen to them. You have to try to understand. You have to try to give them what you can on the farm in terms of opportunities, in terms of education. And so I wanted to think about that. I did. It's one reason I wrote it. But as the time went on, I realized, I saw at the beginning that there's a gap, of course, between the farm owner and the farm worker. And there are gaps, there are many other gaps too. So it was, for me, a language gap. There was a kind of like let me put it in crass terms, let's say a rich-poor gap, economic gap. There was, and with that kind of goes, socioeconomic class things. So I knew there was a gap. I knew there were gaps, but I really thought they could be bridged. And I worked very hard in my mind and the best I could do to build bridges and to work together. And as time went on, you asked how I changed. I realized that the gap was much bigger than I expected and much harder to bridge than I expected. The divisions were deeper. I mean, the worlds apart really were apart. And, but still I thought, if we can throw everything we've got at this, there must be a way to help this family to step up into the first world. They wanted to do that. They loved electricity. You know, when we got there, they weren't living with electricity. They loved that. They wanted better things. They wanted bicycles. They wanted, of course, cell phones came along. And to do that, you have to, those are first world things. How do you, and it's not just about things, but how do you manage your life in a different world? So I did what I could. And I also wanted in the book to show that they themselves made improvements. They themselves tried. At least I got the children to come and say, instead of saying, come and give me money, I say, don't ask for money, ask for work. Then you get money, and you can do what you want with it. And I think that got across. But small things like that were within my power, within our power. And I must say, in the book, of course, if you've read any of it, you'll know that the protagonist is Catherine, and you won't guess who that's based on. And then the antagonist is André, and that's based on the other character in this room. But I had to get his permission to exaggerate his less wholesome qualities, shall we say? No, that's not true. But I asked him if I could really make him into a real bad guy, and that's what I think I did. So, because I needed an antagonist, somebody else just to express the other points of view and to challenge me, and challenge Catherine, I should say.
I would like to pick up on that, because in a sense, of course, it's easy to say, but we are it's we and they, and that kind of polarization happens in Stellenbosch and things like that the whole time. So, isn't it easy to say, but the antagonist, that's not André, that's Godwin, that's Esther, that's Nina. Have anybody perhaps accused you of polarizing? Because if you now compare the title and the first words and the last words in this book, are you going to give up on the bridge building between cultures, or is this simply the way to start? Us and them, yes. We are pro and they are anti. And worlds apart, never the twain shall meet. At the end of it, worlds apart, doesn't it mean this problem, this challenge can never be resolved?
Oh, that's a heavy question. I don't think we can say never resolved. I don't think that. I think that it must be resolved, but it's not easy. And as it took generations to develop, it's taking generations to undevelop, and to sometimes the us and them shows up. But the thing is to try to get past that. As I said at the start, to become a team. It's not us and them, it's we. And to figure out how to sustain that and how the we can go on past even out of the farm area, out of the farm context into a larger life.
Thanks very much. I think actually everybody here thought it was a planted question, this one, because they know you. And they know you won't ever give up on building bridges between different kinds of people. And this is part of the braveness of this book. So, would you like to say something else about the title?
Okay. Yes,
And the cover, of
and the
course.
cover. Okay, thank you. I knew we were coming to that part, the cover and the title. Well, I've already explained the world's part and the gap. And so Yuan and I walk, definitely Yuan, and I often join him, but we walk along this road in the evenings. And it's our neighbors, two of our neighbors' farm road. With permission, we walk along it, we walk with the dogs, and at one point I was taking some photos, and I said, but this is our world, and this symbolizes the divisions. That in a way we're on one side and they are on the other side. But now to kind of bridge that, to work at that. And the road doesn't end, it just goes down into a dip, and then it goes into another road, and it goes into other roads. It's not an ending. And and I might add that the cover was done by a lovely artist in Stellenbosch. I commissioned the cover, and we walked up the road together, and she took this photo, and she did the whole spine, and she did the back cover, and she happens to be 80's daughter. 80 Karstens. So, and she's a lovely, lovely young lady, and she put this together for me. So, I think in the big overall of the world, here we are, a little blip here, a little blip there, but we have to do what we can. You know, blips are blips, but we have to do what we can.
Thank you. Thank you. You never realized that other people also thought that Worlds Apart is a good title until you started looking for it, and there were others.
Yeah, about 40 books published with the same title. The publishing was a huge learning experience because the publishers need a lot of information. They have to put in it all the ISBN numbers, and they put in it legal things, and of course getting it together with the cover, and then there are proofs and proofs and proofs, and that takes a lot of time. It took me a lot of time, but so a big learning curve. But you know, I'm working on a second book, but more like a memoir, not necessarily fiction. Although I hope I don't fictionalize it too much. I want it to be honest, but we'll see. But at least I know some of the ropes now, and I think it will go faster. It will go better. So yes, it's a big learning just to write and publish.
I would like to ask something about the short paragraphs of the book. Is this something that you've done consciously? Because I'm sure you know that many older books have long paragraphs. I mean, Proust, even 40 pages, one paragraph. Is this a conscious thing, or why does one do that?
Well, no, it was not conscious at all. I didn't. So if there's dialogue, of course, you have to then separate much of it. No, it just seemed natural. A couple sentences in the space, a couple sentences, you know, and sections of it. You know, I had to number everything at the beginning because I had to keep track of myself. Because a book like this, you don't write it beginning, middle, and end. You try, but it doesn't work like that. And then you come back and say, no, but I need a better beginning. And then before that beginning, I need another beginning. And then you've got to revise what you've written because now it mustn't repeat very much, and it must take the story forward. So a lot of that kind of revising, and then with the spacing, it just had to be readable, you know. And I had to think what you want as readers. You want enjoyment, and you want maybe to learn something. A friend of mine in America read the book. It's available, by the way, on Amazon, so it's internationally available in softcover and e-book. And she said she learned a lot from it. Learned a lot that she didn't have any clue about from Africa. So I'm glad to hear that. And my sister phoned me one night, 3 o'clock in the morning, her time, and said, "Carol, I can't put your book down." Wow, I've made it. I've done it. This is good. So I hope some other people feel like that. I heard tonight somebody said that. So I think Lily told me that. So thank you very much for that. But you know, people do put it down in the middle, and I go, what did I do wrong in the middle? So I'm going to have to think about that. So I think, did anything?
Yeah, no, I wanted to thank you for spending 9 years of your life, and now it's in our hands. So now.
Yes, thank you. That's a good clue. We discussed this the other day, yesterday.
Now what we do with it,
over to the reader.
Yeah.
And all the readers, because now it's out of my hands. It's really out of my hands. And now, who was the philosopher that said, the death of the author is the birth of the reader.
Mm-hmm.
The author kind of dies now because you're out of it. It's done. But now the reader reads it and interprets it. And of course, we all read and listen with our background and what we know. So interpretations will be different. And so in a way, the readers are part of the book as well. You co-create it as it goes on. I think that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, actually, I think now is the time that you can ask any questions. And Carol is really interested if you've read it, if your questions about it or any comments about it. So please, you're very, very welcome. Anybody?
Maybe you said now it's out of your hands. Would you like to get it back and redo it and redo it, and just as I know you, or?
That is academic writing. That is exactly it.
Yeah, that's academic writing. Well, I did that with this too, but I think though now it's going to have to stand on its own 2 feet. If you find things that need to be changed, I'll have to just take the knocks.
So you were happy?
Yeah. For me, it's over. I mean, it's not over. It'll never be over.
No.
But
when you said so, I told Luca, never write a book. He can dig in it and go over it and over it. His thing is now videos and things like that. So yeah, it's also word apart. When I talk, he doesn't listen for days. So yeah, don't write a book.
One of the very first things Carol taught me, there's no such thing as writing, only rewriting. So, and it taught me a lot about refining your first version and writing as a process. Anything else that you would like to ask? Johan, I'm sure you would like to ask something or comment.
Well, I actually would like to give everybody a warning if they are thinking about writing a book. They must choose their editor very carefully, because Carol had 3 editors. The one said write in the past tense, one said write in the present tense, and then it means a lot of rewriting. So choose your editor very carefully.
okay, the third one.
No, I haven't read it, but I'm really keen to read, and then we'll have coffee and I'll ask my questions.
Okay. Thank you, Helene. Yes, and Helene and Ydalene and I worked together for many years at the university, teaching English as a second language and in the international office, and also academic writing things. And so, yes, we know each other fairly well, so I'll welcome to hear, I'll be eager to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Well, I don't have.
Oh, sorry.
No, you first. Ladies first.
Regarding the shorter paragraphs, it did give me that sense of someone who's trying to make sense of a situation. You know, when something is new and a bit confusing, then you think of this thing and then you think, what about that? And that feeling of hesitancy, that's what I want to name it. That's how it came over to me. There's a hesitance on what is it that's going on, that the shorter paragraphs give, with the open spaces in between.
Yeah, I must say I agree with that, but still it had a very light, okay, I've read 10% of the book. Like I started this morning and I'm struggling to put it down throughout the day. It was hard. But it still had a great flow to it.
Yes.
Like throughout, even though, like in some books, if you see shorter paragraphs, I know with some books, it starts with longer paragraphs and ends off with shorter paragraphs, and it just creates a bit of anxiety, and you can feel the frustration of the writer. Well, here, it just flowed naturally. It didn't feel choppy or it didn't, yeah. Just.
Thanks for sharing that experience. I was hoping that would happen. Thank you.
Yes, you also wanted to ask something.
Yeah, well, not a question.
Yeah, comment.
I'm looking forward to reading it after my wife's done with it. I'm busy reading the book Johan gave me. But I'm just interested to see what's going on in the book, because I used to visit the farm quite frequently when I was younger. And I think it'll be interesting for me to see, as a boy, maybe being oblivious to some of the things happening behind the scenes. I got some of it obviously through the grapevine, through my father. But I think it's going to be interesting for me to actually also be exposed to that element.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah.
Charles, by the way, is our godson, and we've known him since he was about 0.1 year old. and he's been in and out of the farm all the while. And I think one of his buddies is in the book there. So, and he was very good to this guy, and they were nice buddies. And Joe.
I haven't had the pleasure of reading it, and we'll rectify that soon. But what was interesting is the comment earlier, the position you started, and your comment a little later of saying that it is far more complicated than you had first envisaged. And I think that's just the situation we have in South Africa. The 400 years of building to where we are, building complexity, into this thing. And it's not going to be solved in a decade, in 5 decades. But what is interesting is the influence of so many outsiders, and I'm a Gautengan, so I'm an outsider, Stellenbosch, and there's a ready band of us building up here, but it's really interesting to judge the fear level of our neighbours who are third and fourth generation, and I think a lot of South African life is based on fear. Fear of losing what you've got, fear of the unknown, and most human interactions are based on fear. But there are no solutions because there are no ready answers to that. Thanks.
That, I think, is an excellent way of saying it. Actually, one of the very difficult questions I wanted to ask and let go because of the complexity of it all. If we had to say, why did Godwin and Esther behave the way they did? I think it would be oversimplifying everything by saying there's one reason, because there are so many reasons. But I would like Carol to say something about fear, because I think she would be very worried if most of our motivations come from fear. So, Carol.
Fear, in what context? In writing or in the farm?
In the relationships, the broken relationships, even after 300 years, the relationships are still broken. And this seems to me, even in the title, the way of our recognizing that the relationships are so broken, it will take miracles the whole time to mend these. So the relationships on the farm and in town and everywhere here are the relationships still broken, and the way to fix them so complex that it's almost impossible.
Well, I don't think it's impossible. It may be difficult, and it's difficult for a country, let's say, to move in a general from here to over there. But some countries do it, and as far as South Africa goes, I think my personal opinion is that they have done a very good job in many contexts with bringing the various people together. I think on the farms, with the employer-employee relationship, that's a difficult one. In many, it's like an extreme. But you have to work at it, and you have to treat people with dignity and respect, whatever you do, and you have to try to think of their good as well as your own, and do what you can. It just seems like that's a message that many people have written about, the power of one, or doing, around you. And I'm not particularly, well, let's just say the Bible tells you to love your neighbor, and your neighbor can be defined as ne means near, the ones near you. I mean, if you just do that, that's hard enough to do. No offense, neighbors, but to try to help the people and be kind to them, treat them well, that come across your path. I mean, that I think is really a victory. And look, if you're in a position to make policy, to change the laws, to give people a social grant of $350 a month, to make their lives better, to fend off starvation, do that. Let's do that, or do what we can afford, what's possible to do. So there are personal ways, and then there are bigger ways. And I think staying tuned, try to think, try to put yourself in other people's shoes. What's it like for them? So yeah, I think, but fear can be overcome. Sometimes it's necessary to survive, but I think sometimes it goes on, it's irrational, and sometimes that it needs to be faced. Your own fears and societal fears need to be faced, dealt with. So,
Thanks very much, and this was the way you did.
Thank you. Tried my best.
Yeah.